All right, guys. So I've got a I would say a person we met a long way back, and it's great to interview Michael on Caveris, a great cybersecurity platform providing a lot of security for different organizations. As we know, cybersecurity is becoming very hot in this area of change. And, there's a big change happening with what's going on with the coronavirus. And me and Michael, we met a while back, and, he told me all about Caveris and mentioned to me, Naz, I have a story to share. So please do tell me what the story is. So Michael, it's great to have you. It's great to have you on this interview. Obviously, I have quite a bit of a following on LinkedIn. And yeah, we're going to touch upon what Caveris do and what you're all about. So great to have you.
Thanks, Naz. Thank you for having me.
Okay, great. So first things first, tell us a bit about Caveris. Why did you start the project? What was the spur? What drove you on?
Yes, interesting. So been working in infrastructure management for best part of 30 years, and my co-founders have been as well. And we saw an increasing cyber crime happening, basically. More and more cyber crime, more and more attacks, more and more incidents. And really, from our experiences working with large enterprises, whether they be banks, service providers, or telcos, we saw that they were ill prepared, if you like, to weather those upcoming storms. Because if we think it's bad now, we see in the press every week a sort of new security incident. It's only going to get worse as cybercrime becomes more and more automated. And effectively, what we see in big organizations, it's not every organization, but a large number of organizations, is a lot of manual processes, patchy security, and all of that put together is challenging.
So it's challenging in the sense that cybersecurity, the amount of hacks that are happening today is relatively going up. And I've seen a few figures from different outlets mentioning how many times, organizations are under threat from this. And I think this is where Caveris plays a part. Would you agree?
So cybercrime is definitely on the increase. And I remember when I started off in IT infrastructure, I mean, cyber criminals were sort of hacktivists, they were script kiddies, yeah, but it's now a business. You can buy a sort of kit online and you can effectively become a cyber criminal. You can effect a ransomware attack, all of these types of things. It's interesting to look back actually at where the origin came from for the solution, because I used to work as a network security officer for a major investment bank. And my role there was to ensure that the networks that I was responsible for were obviously secure, but also interfacing with audit. And it was very clear from audit that what they were after was well-documented process that was consistently applied. And I sort of cite the story that you could, by a fluke, have all of your hundreds or thousands of routers configured up to standard. But it's highly unlikely that's going to happen time after time, yeah? So it's that consistency that is really important here.
And I totally agree. I think consistency will go down the security element throughout the interview, because I think that's something we're going to touch upon as we go by. But elaborate, what was, the audience is trying to grasp, what's going on today and what is happening in the world. The world is in a very disruptive element right now. We're going through uncertain times. How is Caveris going to change? And elaborate, what spurred you on to do this?
That's a really good question, Naz. We are really in the business of security governance and oversight. And by that, I mean governance is really having the processes in place for managing and reporting on information and cybersecurity. And then that oversight is having that visibility of every control, i.e. protection measure, across the whole of the business. And I sort of give an example here of the MRO in the airline industry, which is the maintenance, repair, and overhaul methodology. And basically, they have a great sort of methodology in place to stop aircrafts falling out of the sky, because obviously that's an existential threat to the airline business. And what they do is, for every part of that airplane, it's diligently maintained and repaired if it needs to be, and it's audited. And due to that, you see very sort of few aircraft falling out of the sky due to poor maintenance. And we don't really do that within the IT infrastructure space. So I think we need to take a leaf out of that, out of their book.
Okay, that's a great answer. So those tuning in, you know, we're discussing about Michael's company, Caveris. Obviously, there's a lot of tech influencers that I'm connected to and so forth, and specialized business professionals. Look, I mean, it's a great thing what you're doing, Michael, and I think it's very important that how the world is changing, you know, we need Caveris as an information security assurance to provide that assurance for companies. So what is the problem you're trying to solve, Michael? What is the groundbreaking thing? Because we can discuss it, but what is that actual problem that's spurring you on?
So at the IT level, which is really sort of where our solution is aimed, if as an administrator, I can probably look after 5 or 10 servers, at a push maybe 20 or 50. But once that number goes above that, 100, 500,
Right.
1,000, 10,000, and the number of sort of different configurations options that we can have on these servers with the applications that are supported, we suddenly reach a sort of myriad of potential exposures. Okay, so if I do one sort of misconfiguration, then it's possible to expose a vulnerability that can be exploited. And if we take that paradigm up into the cloud, where we've got thousands of ephemeral sort of containers being spun up very quickly, then a misconfiguration in that environment can very rapidly lead to thousands of potential exposures being exposed. And
Right.
with these automated bots knocking on the door of these internet-facing servers every day, every hour, they're highly likely to be exploited. And
Yes.
so really we're making sure, we're policing, if you like, that those controls, those protection measures are in place.
And that's a great answer. Break down the sectors? I mean, what are the sectors that you're looking into? Because every organization, every professional would want to know what is the breakdown of what you're providing.
So predominantly we're looking at, I guess, those regulated industries, and that means banking, definitely, operators of essential services, those organizations that are heavily regulated and also heavily audited, because these guys have to make sure security is in place. They've got to make sure business resilience is in place.
Yes.
And they're regulated to those standards. So that's our sort of key market, I'm guessing.
Okay, so that's a great answer. I suppose part of your business motto is consistency. How would you be consistent to provide these solutions? You're obviously providing cybersecurity solutions for different organizations. Where is the consistency of that? Break that down to us.
I'm glad you asked that, Naz, because consistency is vitally important. And in my experience, you can't have good, strong security without consistency. Now, we do that by building into the software modeling of the organization. And that's down from the organization through the hierarchy down to the individual controls and workflows. And that allows us to build structure and order. And consistency is really sort of built on top of that. Consistency, repeatability, and then ultimately predictability.
Right.
Because if I'm consistently applying something across multiple infrastructures or multiple services, then I can predict that that's going to be a strong and safe environment. And that's really important.
I suppose that's also providing that trust for your stakeholders as well.
Absolutely. I mean, stakeholders are vitally important in this, and stakeholders can be regulators, they can be auditors, they can be other parts of the business, third parties, or they can even be consumers. And really that transparency, if you like, and openness and trust is built upon having data that people can scrutinize. And it's that integrity that is really important, I think.
I would say that with the data, you know, we're going through such a, you know, bit of a period right now with what data is leaked and you know, how we're protected and going through all the policy and regulation to ensure that we're following GDPR compliances. Where would you fit in that sector in terms of protecting data? Because data is going to start to flow in the billions in the future, and they say data is the new oil. Where does Caveris fit into that?
So we are, as I say before, we are looking to make sure that every security protection measure is in place
Right.
and is run at the right time. Yeah. So it's a bit
Hmm.
like having your office block, and you leave the office block, you're the last person out. You've got to make sure the doors and the windows are closed. Excuse me.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
You've got to make sure the fire door is closed. Somebody's got to be responsible for making sure the fire alarm is maintained and the burglar alarm and the inventory of people coming in and out. But if you leave a door open or you leave one of these things undone,
Hmm.
then effectively it's an invitation for somebody to come in and steal your assets. Now, it's no different in the cyber world. The only difference really is that there's, instead of having, let's say, tens of break-in points, there's possibly thousands or tens of thousands. And so it becomes a much harder challenge to address.
Okay. And obviously, we're talking about the challenges. Let's go on to the next question then. What is the security workflow automation of Caveris? What is it you're trying to do, and how are you trying to increasingly automate to prevent, cyber attacks? Because this is the whole point of the video interview, is you're preventing that. So tell the elites and the serial entrepreneurs connected to me how you're trying to do that.
So the traditional methods of checking that security configuration is in place and correct is really sort of manual attestation. And we can't keep up. Humans can't keep up. We're not built for these checks. We
Right.
can't do these checks across thousands and thousands of different elements across the environment, whether it be cloud or on-premise, and that can comprise networks and servers and desktops and mobile phones. We can't keep
Right.
up. And we need some sort of automation there to do this, because doing this exercise once a week, once a month is not good enough. That window of exposure is too big. So we need automated low-level compliance checks, and we have that capability where the user can effectively configure their own checks to do that low-level compliance check every hour, every 4 hours, however frequently they want to do that. And that reduces that window of opportunity if there's a misconfiguration or exposure.
And that window of opportunity, if you'd like to elaborate on that, I would imagine it's time consuming. You're trying to assure that you're providing time consuming, projects that not going to take a lot of time, and it's going to be all ongoing. I mean, where do you audit, certain organizations that are at risk of a cyber attack, and how do you prevent them from losing, their data?
These sort of low-level checks are typically carried out by highly skilled staff. So they are doing these low-level compliance checks, and really it's very time-consuming, as you say. And it's sort of grunt work, I term it, and it's manually intensive. They've got to make sure they do these checks, they don't miss a check. They've got to make sure that they build up some evidence so they can go into the audit trail, so that when they get audited, they have that as due diligence. So we are really sort of trying to free up or optimize those resources, I think is a better way of looking at it. And obviously, if we can make sure that every window and every door is locked, then we reduce the likelihood of cybercrime.
Okay, now cybercrime, everyone is probably watching this video interview and saying, oh my God, cybercrime is on the up. There's a lot of, or people are, scared of just simple hacks today. And cybersecurity is starting to become an element. And I like what Caveris is doing in this sector, that is giving these businesses the opportunity. Where do you see cybercrime heading to, and where do you pull Caveris with this to ensure that full protection for these organizations are made?
It's a good question, Naz. So I think I mentioned before, we're seeing more and more automation. And together with automation, you're seeing the cyber criminals adopting advanced techniques like artificial intelligence, machine learning.
Yes.
These sort of automated and advanced techniques that business is using to solve their own challenges, these are now being turned against business. And so it's vitally important that we adopt those same techniques, especially automation. Automation can help us rapidly identify issues and get them fixed. Obviously, artificial intelligence and machine learning will definitely play their part, but initially it's got to be automation.
Right. That's a great answer. Thanks, Michael, for that. So it's good to be transparent to my audience and those people who are following me. I hope you're all enjoying the video interview. Tell us a little bit about your business sentiment behind Caveris. You know, what this is probably one of the most ice-breaking questions in the interview, but what is your business sentiment behind Caveris, and how are you trying to conduct transparency and trust along these organizations?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Naz. We sort of talk about a fairer world where business is conducted with transparency and trust. Yeah, it's building that trust between
Correct.
business and its stakeholders, and that
I
instills
agree.
confidence and credibility. Yeah, and without that, then how do you know who you're conducting business with? It's great and exciting that we've recently introduced blockchain into our capabilities.
Quite an exciting industry, Michael.
Yeah, and the reason that we've done this is that we want to have an immutable and incontestable evidential proof audit trail. Yeah, so
Right.
we build up and we maintain this audit trail of all of the control instances that are run, and having that now as irrefutable, I think, is really powerful. It means that it can't be tampered with, as you know, and it's
Correct.
a
Yes.
time an auditor can go back and look at and say, okay, well that happened there, and you can't contest it. It's in black and white. So I think that's really, really powerful.
And I want to elaborate. How can you tell my audience, you know, with the business sentiment, which you just briefly described, how can you tell my audience, you know, the confidence and the resilient systems you're putting into place? What are you doing with these organizations as such?
Yeah. So I know as a consumer, whether it's a personal consumer or a business consumer, I'm not always confident of transacting business with enterprises, organizations on the net. Yeah, you don't know their pedigree, you don't know their
Correct.
integrity, and I think the sort of ratings engines that we rely upon, whether it's in the airline or the tourist industry or the restaurant or even just buying something off the Amazons of this world, they're broken. People have lost trust in them. We need a sort of more objective mechanism, I think, for rating those organizations. And part of what we do is we present that information as we talk about that evidential proof audit trail, which is incontestable. And that can then be presented, if you like, or rendered to customers, either via our dashboards or via API calls to construct their own dashboards. So that then should give you and me and everybody else out there who's a customer faith and confidence that they're dealing with an organization that is transparent in promoting how well they're addressing security. And it doesn't just have to be security. It can be how well they're doing any other sort of thing.
So I wholeheartedly agree. Trust is everything. Something you want to say about trust?
Just really, trust is built upon sort of that transparency, I think, and having the integrity in there. And if you can have that, then trust automatically sort of follows on from that.
That's a great answer. So for those tuning in, I hope you're enjoying the interview. Before we go on to the final question, Michael, I just want to know for people who are tuning in, just in a simple way, on a simple statement, where are you taking Caveris? What is what is the aim behind this? And just break it down so people can then reiterate in their mind what is Caveris and what you do.
So we have a very simple strapline, Naz, and it is Caveris ensures the correct protection measures are run at the correct time by the correct resource to the correct standard. Now that resource can be manual or it can be automated. It can be a robotic automated compliance check. So sort of correct.
Okay. And that's a great way to put it. You know, we talked about trust and transparency, but also correctness. Would you elaborate on that?
Well, correct is doing the right thing at the right time. Yeah. So you've got to have ownership. So when we talk about protection measures, security controls, there has to be an owner for every one of those, because if there's no owner, then it gets hazy. Yeah. Right. So there's got to be that ownership and accountability. Tasks, activities have to be done to a standard. So that's the correct standard. And they've got to be done at the correct time. Some tasks, maybe it's once a year. Other tasks, it's going to be a lot more frequently. It could be once a day or even more frequent than that.
The people that are tuning in, I hope you do follow Caveris. I hope you do follow up and get in touch with Michael. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comments when we publish this video interview. So do not hesitate to comment and reach out to Michael to do that. My final question, Michael, is where do you see Caveris, and how would you define it to the audience that would want to sort of grasp where you're going in the next few months?
Sure. So we provide that total control oversight, that visibility of every security control, that protection measure across the whole of the organization. And really where we focus, where we concentrate is on technology, and whether that be technology on premise or in the cloud, and performing those automated low-level compliance checks, because we've got to get away from these manual attestations. Yeah, we can't reduce cybercrime by doing a check once a week or once a month. We have to move to automation. So it's really very much focused at that technology space, the cybercrime, and making sure those configurations, environments are as secure as they can be. And that is one way to do that is by making sure that all of the security instrumentation is checked on an ongoing basis.
And how would you provide that implementation for those organizations? How would you basically help them to be cyber free?
So we have a SaaS solution that effectively sits in the cloud and comes predefined with a set of templates, and those are templates of disciplines, activities, and controls. And customers can take those and use those, and or they can build their own. We have the ability to through the UI build your own disciplines, activities, and controls very rapidly. We also have an on-premise compliance automation manager module. Now that sits on a VM and it integrates with third-party tool sets, pulls back data on a periodic basis, for example, once a day, once every 4 hours, and builds what we call a virtual CMDB. And that virtual CMDB is essentially an asset registry of data attributes. And then we can build user configurable compliance checks against that. So we can check, for example, that AV malware signatures are not out of date. We can also check, for example, backups have run and have not failed. And we can then correlate those two together. So if we take AV malware signatures not up to date on servers 1 through 10, and we take backups failing on those same servers, then we can see that Mr. Customer has a problem if he's subject to a ransomware attack, because he's going to find it very difficult to overcome that.
And that's and how would you then basically help that customer sort of overcome that? I mean, what would you do?
So sure. So our SaaS solution, as I say, is out of the box, ready to go. And that provides that coverage of manual attestation, and it makes it very simple for people to build their own disciplines, activities, and controls and configure. We have a number of integrations at the PCAM, which is the on-premise compliance automation manager module. But we have built an environment with a REST API and normalized extensible data model that we call, which is very simple for us to ingest other data points. So we can hook into whether it's a backup and restore tool, whether it's a configuration management tool, whether it's a firewall management tool, it doesn't matter. We can very easily hook into these tool sets, pull back data, and start to run these low-level compliance checks very rapidly.
Thank you, Michael, for answering all about Caveris and what you guys do. I just, before we close this interview, is there anything finally you'd like to elaborate on? Is there something groundbreaking that you can share to my over my 30,000 followers about where you're going?
So really, we're on this journey to make sure that businesses can police every security control out there.
I like that, yeah.
No cracks, yeah. It's too easy to forget about something. And if you've got it defined in a structure and an order, and there's an orchestration behind that and a schedule, and ownership, and you've got dials and graphs that are presenting you this information that's saying you haven't done this or you're weak in that area, it brings visibility to it. So it's that visibility and making sure that businesses track and run every protection measure, because it's too easy for to become a victim if you don't do this.
Right, and nobody wants to be victims at all. I think a lot of organizations will probably turn to Caveris for that solution. and this victim mentality is happening quite a lot now as well.
Mm.
What? Just finally, before we wrap this, I'm sure a lot of people would want to know is what sector are you targeting, Michael? We've discussed the project, but where are you going with this? What sector is it? Is it hospitality or is it digital? I mean, where do you see this going?
So it is those industries that are heavily regulated, and typically your banking industry. Also, as I said before, the operators of essential services. So that's sort of UK critical infrastructure PLC or any national infrastructure, energy providers, utilities, farmers, pharmaceuticals, excuse me, health. These organisations or these parts of the infrastructure that are core and basically can't go down.
Is the banking sector in need of this as well?
Absolutely, banking is key to this, and finance, as you know, is heavily regulated, and
Yes.
it is definitely an area that we'll be sort of very heavily looking into.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. What a privilege to interview you. Where can we find you, Michael? Obviously, put your details. You can elaborate it now, and that would help.
So sure, at www.caveris.co.uk, or email me at michael.bonell@caveris.co.uk.
There you go, guys. So all the people that have tuned in, I hope you enjoyed this video interview. It's a privilege to have Michael. We met a while back, and we thought we'll do this. So it's great to have Michael share us all about his project. And if you do need to reach out to Michael, please do not hesitate to contact him or leave a comment on the comment section below. And I'm sure we'll get this out to as many people as possible. All right, Michael, it's an absolute privilege to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Naz. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.